Another bump in the road for the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. A Scottish court has ruled his decision to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks was unlawful.
The matter is likely, therefore, to require resolution by the United Kingdom Supreme Court.
A panel of 3 judges saying Johnson was attempting to prevent Parliament from holding the government to account before the Brexit deadline. Now, despite the ruling, the court did not order the suspension to be overturned, leaving a final decision to the Supreme Court. Let's go to Randall Hansen on this, interim director of the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. Thanks for your time. This is obviously a win for the Remain side, but it looks like it might not change anything immediately if they have not been ordered to get back to work.
Oh, no, I think that's right. And it's unlikely that the Supreme Court will side with the lower Scottish court. Constitutional tradition in the United Kingdom gives the executive a great deal of power, including the power to prorogue. So I'd be rather surprised if this decision were affirmed at the Supreme Court level.
What did you make of the reasoning by the court that the Prime Minister was misleading the Queen as to the reason Parliament should be suspended?
And that's very interesting. There's 2 aspects here. One, what the Scottish court said was absolutely right. The idea that this was there to allow the time for the preparation of the Queen's speech is ridiculous. This was clearly designed to shut down Parliament, to end debate, to limit the ability of the legislature to check the executive. It failed, but that was the plan. And that to allow Johnson to drag the country or send the country shooting right towards a hard Brexit. So the court was absolutely right in the substance. What you bring up on the Queen is interesting because if I'm wrong, it will be because the Supreme Court concluded that the executive, the Prime Minister, lied to the Queen. We are in extraordinary constitutional territory if that's the case. If you lie to Parliament, you are expected to resign. The Parliament, the government, is Her Majesty's government. She is the head of state, there as here, of course. If you lie to the Queen, then perhaps that is also a resignation issue. So I predict that the Supreme Court will side with the government. If they do not, it will be on those grounds. It'll be very serious for Johnson indeed.
OK, expected to resign. Boris Johnson isn't the man who does what people expect of him. Would he be forced to resign?
If the difficulty in all situations in the UK is that the Constitution is much less codified than ours or the Americans or the Germans, and everything runs by convention. And Brexit is wrecking the British Constitution. All of that said, if the Supreme Court actually said in bold terms that the Prime Minister lied to the Queen, I do not see how he could survive. If he did not resign, then a non-confidence vote would bring his government crashing down, and it would indeed be an issue in the election.
Randall, let me talk some more about timeline, because you mentioned it has to go to the Supreme Court. How fast would that happen, and would it affect, then, the suspension of Parliament? We know they're not supposed to get back to work until mid-October.
Well, I mean, that'll partly depend on how the court, when the court decides it's willing to hear this case. So we'll have to wait and see. It could hear it very quickly. And very theoretically, if they ruled that prorogation was unconstitutional, again, I'd be surprised to see that ruling. But if we did get that ruling, then the pressure to reconvene Parliament would, I suspect, be overwhelming. But again, this is a bit speculative on my part, because as so often in the Brexit debate, we are breaking new constitutional ground here.
Got it. Randall Hansen, appreciate you joining us on the topic and appreciate your time, sir. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.